Imagine you're driving alone at night. Not like scary movie alone, just regular alone. The kind where your thoughts get louder than the engine. Then the road changes. Not physically, not like you hit fog or a detour. The feeling changes. It's like you crossed some invisible line and your body noticed before your brain did. And that's when you see him. Not a monster, not a shadow, a man. Standing where a man shouldn't be standing, and he's calm as a parked car. And he's smiling. It's not friendly, but also not threatening either. It's just fixed. Tonight's file isn't about a creature chasing you through the woods. It's about something worse. Something that walks up to you like it belongs here. And it gives you a name to remember. Welcome back to the Lore Keeper's Archive. If you're new here, we document the strange, the infamous, and the stories that linger like static on an old tape. Every episode is built like a case file. What was reported, what was repeated, what changed over time, and what still doesn't fit. Tonight we're opening with one of the most unsettling files from the 1960s wave of high-strangeness, the case of Indrid Cold. Not because it's the most explosive story, but because it's one of the most personal. Now, some encounters start with lights in the sky. Some start with footprints in the mud. This one starts with something that shouldn't be scary, but is. A smile. Now, I know we covered the smiley face murders in previous video. It's just coincidence. Promise. But this smile, it's not like a normal smile. It's not a friendly one. The kind that looks attached wrong. Like it's been practiced in a mirror that doesn't reflect people. Tonight's case file is about Indrid Cold, often tied to the Grinning Man archetype and connected to the wave of the 1960s high-strangeness reported in and around West Virginia. And whether you believe in aliens, Men in Black style encounters, interdimensional weirdness, or plain human deception, this case sticks because it doesn't feel like a monster story. It feels like a conversation you weren't supposed to have. Indrid Cold is one of those stories that gets repeated so much that people forget that there are different versions. So here are the rules. 1. Separate witness claims from researcher interpretation. Rule 2. Respect the timeline. Rule 3. Don't pretend the story is clean. It isn't. It's messy. It's living folklore. Tonight we're covering the core encounters tied to the name Indrid Cold. The Grinning Man thread connected to other reports. Why Point Pleasant became a gravity well for weirdness. What skeptics argue and what survives. And why this archetype keeps resurfacing. Because the scariest part of this file isn't a UFO. It's the calmness. And with that being said, do me a favor, drop a quick comment. Do you watch these videos as a skeptic, a believer? Are you somewhere in the middle? Let me know in the comment. The encounter most people mean when they say Indrid Cold centers around Woodrow Derenberger, a salesman from West Virginia who reported a strange incident in early November of 1966 while driving. The story is often told like this. He's on a road. He notices something unusual ahead. The object appears in a way that controls the situation. He stops, and then a figure approaches. It's not a creature, not a little green man, but a human man. Human shaped, human presenting, close enough to speak with, close enough to see details. That's what makes this one different. The light in the sky stories are distant, abstract. This story is intimate. It's someone stepping into your space. And the tone in most tellings is unsettling for a specific reason. The figure is described as calm, polite, and almost casual. Like you didn't stumble into something impossible, like you're the late one. Then comes the most famous detail, the name. The visitor is associated with the name Cold. Sometimes it's presented as spoken, sometimes it's mentally received. Either way, the story gives you a label, which gives your mind something to hold. Because once you name it, you follow it easier. So let's slow the tape down for a second. Picture the road at night. The kind of road that turns the world into two colors. Headlight white and everything else. The hum of tires become background noise. Then the car gets quiet in that unnatural way that makes you suddenly aware of your own breathing. And when you're alone long enough, your brain starts doing what brains do. It fills the dark with guesses. So when something finally appears in front of you, it doesn't feel like a surprise. It feels like the answer to a question you didn't know you were asking. No matter what you believe happened, this report becomes a seed. Not because it's provable, but because it's memorable. A humanoid encounter is way more contagious than a distant light. A light can be argued into dust. A man is personal. So put yourself in that driver's seat. If a stranger stepped out of something impossible and started talking like it was normal, what do? Names do something powerful in folklore. They turn an event into a character. Without a name, this is a weird encounter on the road. With a name, it becomes a repeatable entity. And once the public has the name, people start scanning their own memories. Wait, I saw someone like that. Wait, I remember a grin like that. Wait, this reminds me of this. So, when Indrid Cold enters the myth, it becomes a magnet, and other stories start getting pulled into its orbit. That's where the file gets complicated. Indrid Cold doesn't become famous just because of a witness telling a story. It becomes famous because a researcher with a very specific style helps shape the public's understanding of it. That researcher is John A. Keel. Keel doesn't treat reports like isolated dots. He treats them like patterns. It's compelling, but it's also controversial. Because when you connect enough dots, you can start drawing shapes that weren't there. So the responsible approach is nil is important because he preserved and amplified the stories. Nil is risky because his style can blur the line between documentation and narrative. But this isn't a courtroom case. This is a folklore case. This is where the Grinning Man archetype gets reinforced. A separate report from 1966 in New Jersey gets linked to the wider telling. Witnesses describing a strange, tall man, odd behavior, and that same unsettling expression. Different places, different witnesses. Same theme, a human-shaped figure that feels wrong. Believers say it wasn't isolated. Skeptics say this is the legend absorbing another legend. Both reactions make sense. Because once you create an entity type, people start sorting their stories into the same bucket. Humans have categories. And in this category, the defining traits isn't claws or wings, it's facial expressions. A grin that doesn't behave. And Point Pleasant becomes the black hole in the middle of this era. Once a location gets mystic, it starts attracting stories. You've got sightings, rumors, fear feedback loops, media attention, local swapping stories, outsiders visiting and asking questions. This is how the flap grows. And the nil era framing links humanoid encounters, UFO lore, strange calls, and the vibe of being watched. Whether those links are literal or thematic, the effect is the same. It makes Indrid Cold feel like part of a system, not an accident, a pattern. The 1960s were a perfect environment for flap stories. You had mass media that could spread a story fast, communities small enough that rumors moved like electricity, a cultural atmosphere that already felt intense, uncertain, and watched, and just enough technology in the public imagination to make official secrecy feel plausible. And here's the key. Attention creates more attention. Someone sees something weird. A paper mentions it. Neighbors start scanning the skies. Teenagers dare each other to go out at night. Someone mistakes normal light for something else. Then that becomes another report. Soon, the story isn't even the event. The story is the community reacting to the event. And then the place gets labeled as strange. It becomes a magnet for every odd thing that happens afterward. Lights you would normally ignore become signs. A weird stranger becomes a visitor. And random phone calls become a warning. The flap turns the whole town into a lens. So when people ask, was Point Pleasant really that weird? The better question is, what happens to a place when it believes it's being watched? Because belief changes behavior, and behavior creates more stories. Now we do the hard part. Long form doesn't mean we only serve the spooky version. It means we open every drawer, even the ones that ruin the vibe. Skeptics point out issues common in cases like this. Details shifting between versions, retellings becoming cleaner and more cinematic, writers presenting narrative as facts, witnesses becoming part of a public cycle, intentionally or not. So, what survives under that night? Usually, the core emotional experience. Someone believed they encountered something. And in the Indrid Cold file, the stable impact is this: a human-shaped stranger behaving slightly wrong with an expression that doesn't match the moment. That detail is psychologically potent, a light that can't be argued into dust. It's a face that stays. Now, this case file in particular gets grouped in with Men in Black flavored lore for a reason. Not necessarily because it's literally a man in black, but because the vibes overlap. Social intimidation energy, strange formality, a natural claim, eye contact that feels staged, a smile that feels like it's for you, not with you. Even if you strip out the paranormal, the emotional shape remains. The fear that someone is watching you from a place you can't access. The smile becomes the symbol of the fear, not rage, not violence, just a grin, as if the situation is funny to them. Let's talk Uncanny Valley, because it's the engine that powers this case. Your brain is trained to read faces for survival. Micro expressions, eye contact, timing, social rhythm. A normal smile has a pattern. It has a rise, has a fall. It matches the eyes. It fits the moment. But the uncanny smile is a counterfeit. It's the right shape in the wrong context with the wrong timing. And your body reacts before your logic does. That's why almost human can be scarier than not human. A monster that looks like a monster gives you instructions. It's clearly other. But something that looks human and behaves wrong forces you into a new fear. What if I can't tell the difference? That's the nightmare Indrid Cold represents. Not an attack, an approach, a polite conversation that feels like a trap. Indrid Cold evolved beyond its origins. Today, the uncanny smiling visitor shows up in modern paranormal threads, retellings, and high-strangeness communities. Because once an archetype exists, people will see it everywhere, and the internet accelerates that. 100 retellings, 1,000 comments. It becomes less about what happened and more about what it represents. A fear that's hard to name. That something can approach you politely and still feel like a threat. So, what is scarier to you? A monster that looks like a monster, or something that's almost human? What do I think? I think Indrid Cold is a perfect storm case. A witness tells a story that shook it. A research error framework gives the story a larger map. Retellings polish it into something more cinematic. The public locks onto the most effective symbol, the grin. Whether this was a genuine anomalous encounter, a misinterpretation, a hoax that grew legs, a story reshaped by attention, or a blend of all of the above, the result is still the same. Indrid Cold became a modern folklore entity. Not because we proved him, but because the idea is too effective to die. You don't have to believe in Indrid Cold for the case to work. The only thing you have to imagine is being alone on the road and seeing a man step out of the impossible, smiling like he's been waiting for you. A little archive note. If something can borrow a human's face, how would you know it wasn't human? If the signals we trust the most is a smile, what happens when that smile lies? That's why this file endures. Not because it's neat, because it's invasive. You made it to the end. Congratulations, you're officially part of the archive. If you want more cases like this, please hit that subscribe button and keep the bell on so you don't miss the next entry. And in the comments, tell me which theory you'd lean towards and what detail creeps you out the most. Was it the road encounter? Is it the name? Is it the smile? And if there's a case you want opened next, drop it down there. Same archive, next file.